Good morning and happy Monday. Hope you had a great weekend. In a minute, I am going to be talking to Chief Justice Frank Clark of the Supreme Court, sitting in Waterford today and tomorrow. We are also going to talk to Cormac Cronin from Bodega on the impact of restaurants when people don't show up after reserving a table. We've heard of a lot of restaurants closing down, the latest being Le Crivon in Dublin because of this particular matter. The All Together Now lineup is announced. We are going to be talking to the organisers. We want to hear about all your thoughts on sports. We are going to talk about hurling. We're going to talk about Gaelic football. We're going to talk about the soccer and the rugby. Let us know what you think. 083 3333 975. You can call Laura on 051 846 123. Richard Hogan is going to join us about parenting the screenager. Very important for parents to listen to this. And also, are you clueless about politics? Do you really know how the proportional representation system works or how governments are formed? And we're going to have our latest on our business awards. Firstly, a Supreme Court appeal to keep murderer Graham Dwyer in jail is being broadcast live on RTE today. Dwyer successfully challenged the retention and accessing of his mobile phone data, and now the state is challenging that decision. So the state maintains basically that the High Court ruling has implications extending well beyond Dwyer's case, and it could have enormous adverse consequences for the investigation and prosecution, I suppose, of serious crimes in Ireland. As you may know, Dwyer's a 47-year-old architect. He was convicted of the murder of Elaine O'Hara in 2015, 5 years ago, after the 36-year-old childcare worker's skeletal remains were found in Rathfarnham in County Dublin. He's been sentenced to life in prison. So a decision on, I suppose, the evidence and how evidence is garnered will be spoken about today by the Supreme Court, sitting for the very first time in Waterford. And the head of the Supreme Court is Chief Justice Frank Clark. Chief Justice, good morning.
Good morning to you.
Rugby. What did you think?
Not much.
Do you follow the game?
I do. I'm a Leinster season ticket holder, and some of us came down early yesterday to watch the match, but maybe that was a mistake.
Very disappointing.
Very disappointing, yeah.
Hard to see a way out, like in terms of the future as well for them, you know. But they do try hard.
Yeah, and I mean, the first two games were promising enough, the Welsh game in particular, so that made it all the more disappointing, I suppose.
Had you a good night? Stayed in Faith Lake last night?
Yes.
Lovely hotel?
Very enjoyable. Good rest. Ready to hit the road running this morning.
And you are at the official opening of Waterford Courthouse, the refurbished courthouse there a number of years ago. Very impressive building.
It is, really is, and I think it's a great example of marrying the old with the new. You know, the old historic portico was kept, but then there's a modern part as well, and I think they match each other and provide the kind of modern facilities you need.
The court service has done quite a considerable amount of work on courthouses around the country. You're happy with how things have gone?
Yeah, there's still some more to be done. We had a programme for 7 major new courthouses. I can't really claim any credit for it. It was my predecessor, Susan Denham, that put all the plans in place. I just got to open them all, which was great fun. Letterkenny, Drogheda, Wexford, Waterford, Cork, Limerick and Mullingar. The big idea is there really needs to be one major modern courthouse with the kind of facilities you need nowadays, places for vulnerable witnesses, ways of keeping jurors apart from the accused or the victims in crime. And we have that now in most counties, but there's about 5 counties yet that really need that sort of big county town courthouse, and that will be the next plan. And also we have a plan to build a major new family law centre in Dublin. So I think they'd be the next 2 big items on the agenda.
Because if people don't know how courts work, they can look at this and they can say, oh, extravagance of money being spent. But courts have moved on from where they were in the past. And the importance of giving witnesses and victims and accused privacy and It's so different from the past.
Absolutely. I mean, it still happens in some places because we haven't completed the programme. But the idea, for example, that people involved in family law disputes are having the meeting with their lawyers in a corridor or in some places nearly out in the street is not acceptable these days. Or, as you say, the idea that a vulnerable witness doesn't have facilities where they can be properly looked after when they have to give evidence. It'd be a difficult enough thing for many of them to give evidence, but at least if you put the physical infrastructure in place, you can minimise those difficulties.
It's the first time the Supreme Court is in Waterford, I understand.
It is, yes.
Why are you here today?
Well, it started with a pilot, again, by my predecessor, Susan. We went to Cork, and when I became Chief Justice, I decided to build on that, and it's now become almost an annual event. So 2 years ago we were in Limerick, last year we were in Galway. This year we're taking in the southeast, which is Cork, which is Waterford and Kilkenny, and the plan is next year to go to the far end of the country in the northwest, go to Castlebar and Letterkenny. And I think there's a number of ideas behind it, but perhaps the biggest one is to make the point that the Supreme Court is the Supreme Court of Ireland, not of Dublin. And particularly since the new Court of Appeal came in just over 6 years ago, the Supreme Court is able to concentrate on only hearing cases that have significance across the board. So what we decide now will affect everyone in the country in the kind of areas that the cases are come from. And because of that, it's important that I think we're seen out there as being the court that makes these decisions for the country as a whole. That's
a big step, and it's a big sign, and it's welcome.
Well, I think so. I mean, when I first was appointed to the Supreme Court, which was 2012, there was no Court of Appeal, so it meant every ordinary appeal from the High Court came to the Supreme Court, and there was a huge amount of cases, and therefore a very big backlog. Yeah. And if routine cases that couldn't get any priority were taking upwards of 4 years. And also an awful lot of the time of the court was spent dealing with routine cases. And it would be probably fair to say the court didn't always have the time to give the detailed kind of consideration to the really important cases because it had so much work. But that's now changed to a large extent, and the backlog more or less cleared last year. So we're now down to just dealing with the cases that have been through the Court of Appeal, have been selected by the Supreme Court as involving an important issue, and we can give them the time they deserve.
I know you can't talk specifically about the issue itself, but in terms of what's going to happen today?
Well, today, it's two things. I suppose I do always have to emphasise that the primary business of the Supreme Court is to hear and decide cases. It's important that we're seen to be in Waterford and we were seen to be in other places, but at the end of the day job is hearing the cases and making the law that those cases generate. So in one case, we'll be giving judgment in a case involving the legality, as a matter of European law, of Irish measures for retaining telephony data, where your phone was on Tuesday last or whatever, and getting access to it by the police as part of their investigations. And it's really a European law issue, so we'll be giving judgment in that. And we're also hearing a case which is, I suppose you'd have to describe it as a lawyer's case. It involves Waterford Credit Union, but it's to do with the obligations to disclose documents in the course of civil proceedings. And while that may only be interesting to lawyers, it has the potential to affect an awful lot of cases. So it's again one of these types of cases that have a big consequences. So that's the case we'll be hearing today.
How does the Supreme Court work behind the scenes? Maybe give the people a little bit of an insight. Like, for example, when a matter comes before the court, do the different judges go off on their own and study and research themselves? There's a lot of work goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah, in fact, really the way it works is we would typically meet for about half an hour before the hearing, just to get our minds clear on the issues we want to discuss with counsel during the hearing. As soon as the case is over, we will have a case conference. And at that case conference, it'll normally become clear what the general view is. It may be that everyone's agreed and one person is nominated to write the judgment. That's a kind of fairly straightforward case. Sometimes, if it's more complicated, there may be need for 2, 3, 4 conferences before a position is worked out. And sometimes people don't always agree, and in our system, not always the case in other countries, but in our system, each judge can write their own judgment if they want. What we normally do nowadays is whoever is writing will circulate by email colleagues who agree but may make comments about, perhaps we need to say a bit more about this or a bit less about that, or put that a different way. And there's no formality to that. It's just it works out in its own way. And when everyone's happy with it, we then list it for judgment to be delivered. And
that idea of judges making individual judgments, it works well. You're happy with it?
I think so. I think we do need to be careful to make sure that at least what the overall view of the court is fairly clear. You don't want 5 people saying very different things, but you need to have a majority who more or less agree on the proper approach, because then that fixes the law for the future. But I think it is a good idea that people can say, if someone doesn't agree, that they can put their views on the record. And I suppose over the years there have often been cases where what was the minority view in time becomes the majority view. And having that on the record can often be a useful way to generate that debate for the future.
And how does your role sit into this as Chief Justice?
Well, in terms of judging, I one vote the same as everyone else. I've been in minorities. I suppose the difference of the role, so far as the court is concerned, is you're the organiser of the court. You make the arrangements. You decide who's going to sit on what cases, the dates of cases. So it's really the Chief Justice's role, so far as the court is concerned, is really as an administrator.
And you're also chair of the court service.
Yes.
How is that defined?
It is the body that provides all the backup for the courts. I think we have a full-time equivalent staff of nearly 1,100 nowadays. Wow. Our total budget is of the order of 150 million. But we would build the courthouses like we were just discussing earlier, but we'd employ the court staff in every court office around the country. We provide the video links where they're needed. The whole range of services that are needed to keep the courts open are provided by the court service. And interestingly, the budget, like everyone else, the budget of the court service suffered badly during the recession. But we never had to close a courthouse. A lot of other things got cut. Our IT got fairly outdated because we hadn't the money to spend on it. But at least we kept the primary show on the road. Every courthouse sat the day it was meant to sit.
Very interesting. Chief Justice Frank Clark, we will talk about the television coverage and the televising of today's proceedings next. Welcome back. You're listening to Deise Today, and we have a very special guest this morning, the leading judge in Ireland, Chief Justice Frank Clark, who's Chief of the Supreme Court in Waterford today. In terms of television coverage, today's proceedings are being covered by RTE, and it's on RTE News now. Can you see a time where the experience is learned and can be extended to other courts regarding televising cases?
I think it depends on what bit of cases you're talking about. My own view is that the critical thing is it can't interfere with the process. Now, I think the cameras coming in to film judges giving a judgment can't interfere. The judgment's written. It's there. I'd be concerned that in some kind of cases, high-profile criminal cases, cameras being there might affect the process. People might play to the camera, as it were, rather than run the court case the way it is. So I think we're a long way off that.
Long way off.
But areas such as legal argument, I could see an expansion into that. Perhaps the UK is about to adopt a pilot scheme which will allow the filming of judges giving sentencing remarks in criminal cases. We'll maybe see how that goes and have a look at that in the future. I would see it as an incremental process, but I think there are big problems about filming every bit of every court case.
Yeah. And do you have any system in place for examining that? Is there like a subcommittee or is there a working group?
There's a group at the moment who are looking at allowing or building a model, I suppose, to allow the filming of all Supreme Court arguments. Part of the problem is it's expensive. I don't think RTE would be prepared to put up the money to show cases which might be very interesting to a small number of lawyers but mightn't be very interesting to the public.
Yes.
What the UK Supreme Court does is they have a sort of streaming system, and we're looking at that and seeing is there some way that we could replicate that. It's a funny thing. I had the great honour of being asked to speak at the opening of the European Court of Human Rights at the end of last month. And the president of that court made the point that they have a live streaming system that is paid for by Ireland. About 8 or 9 years ago, they were thinking about doing this, and as it happened, the Irish judge of the court at that time, John Hedigan, persuaded the Irish government to put up the money, and the Irish government does put up the money every year. So we're actually paying to film the European Court of Human Rights, but not our own. So we'll see where that one goes.
Yeah, you'd have to be careful as well. Some judges, you would not see judges playing to the audience either, would we?
Well, we wouldn't. That couldn't conceivably happen, of course.
No. Briefly, I suppose, and coming close to the end of this now, in terms of how the types of cases that the Supreme Court has been hearing the past few years compared to the past, has it changed much?
I think it has, and it is for the reason we discussed earlier, because there's now a filter. We don't have to hear every case. The case has to meet a threshold which is written in the Constitution, has to be of general public importance. Criminal cases would be the largest single group still, but areas such as environmental law are increasingly coming to the court. We've had a lot of cases involving immigration issues, refugee status and the like, and there are also quite a number of cases involving the European arrest warrant. And it's interesting, if you think of those three areas, which I would think are the growth areas, they all have a significant European Union law dimension. The European arrest warrant is a creature of European law, as it were, but both immigration law and environmental law are heavily influenced by European law. And that makes it perhaps a little more complicated, and therefore there's more likely to be legal issues, some of which we have to refer on to the European Court.
Have you made any efforts, I suppose, or any, as Brexit happens, can you see any sort of relationship between the European law and how Ireland's law, as it has developed out of a UK system, can change?
I think that'll be a big challenge for us. As you say, we have what's called the common law, which derives from UK law, as have the States, Canada, Australia, many other countries. But there are significant differences between that legal system and the one that operates in most continental countries. And I suppose to an extent we were able to rely on the UK to fight the common law corner within the EU up to now. But I think we are now the biggest common law country in the EU, even though we're very small. Both Cyprus and Malta have mixed systems, partly common law, partly civil law. So I think it will be a big challenge for us to, as now the leading common law country within the EU. But I think our European colleagues are anxious to recognise that, and to recognise the fact that they want contact with the common law world as well. Europe has a lot of dealings with those other countries. So I think we're maybe, in one sense, the challenge is also an opportunity. And the government has now developed a policy in conjunction with the IDA to try and promote Ireland as a place for international dispute resolution, selling it as a common law country to an American, for example, a similar legal system to the one you're used to, but within the EU and in an English-speaking country. We may have some opportunities to promote Ireland in that way. I think the challenges are bigger than the opportunities, but there are some opportunities.
And again, have you put in place any kind of working group to look at this?
Yes, we in particular we have regular contacts with our colleagues both in the UK and especially our colleagues in Northern Ireland, and we've set up arrangements to have discussions, kind of nuts and bolts kind of discussions to solve practical problems. I mean, it's probably not widely known, but on the evening when the first Brexit cliff was about to occur, there were arrangements had been made for the High Court to sit at 11 p.m, which was Brexit time, as it were, because there were things that needed to be done immediately. For example, someone who was in custody awaiting being sent to the UK under a European arrest warrant. Well, the European arrest warrant died if the UK left without a deal. There's no reason why you couldn't have a good old-fashioned extradition like we had before there were ever European arrest warrants, but it needed a court order. Yes. And plenty of other examples could be given. So, you know,
what date was that? When was that?
The first time, was it in January of last year. It was the time
Yes.
when. Sorry, it was the expiry date of the original Article 50 notice.
Yes.
So that if there wasn't a deal by that date, the UK went.
You had to put in place contingency plans.
Now they didn't have to be implemented because there was an extension granted, but still. They're the sort of practical issues that will arise, and I'm sure there are issues we haven't thought of that will crop up arising out of Brexit. The UK became so entwined legally in the European Union that disentangling all that's going to be difficult, and it's bound to give problems. So we have contacts with our colleagues to try and put in place practical ways of solving those kind of problems as they arise.
Are you enjoying your job?
Yes. I found the first year challenging.
In what way?
Well, no matter how close you are to seeing the job being done. I mean, I was sitting on the Supreme Court and saw my predecessor doing the job, and you can see that's what she does. But being it is different than seeing it. And just, when the buck stops with you, doing things for the first time. Like, for example, you mentioned I chaired the court service. I'd never been on the court service board. So suddenly you turn up at a meeting and you're the chair. That's challenging. But the second time is easier, and by the fourth time you kind of feel I can do this. So but I am enjoying it. It is a challenging job. But
and do most judges get on with each other?
Yeah, I'd certainly say the current Supreme Court is a happy place. We don't always agree.
Yes,
but
of course.
We manage to disagree without rancour.
Without falling out.
And people will happily say, well, I'm afraid I can't agree with your judgment in that. I'm going to write a judgment that says you're wrong. Politely, but nonetheless firmly. So I think it's important that working relationship is maintained.
And it must be great as well, that challenge of people testing you and commenting, and that's a great intellectual exercise.
Absolutely, and I think it makes the quality of judgments better. If a colleague that you respect says, I can't agree with that, you have to think, well, why do I still... Well, maybe you're persuaded by them that you're wrong, but even if you're not, you have to think, well, why don't I agree with that contrary view? And that probably improves your judgment, because you have to explain in your judgment why it is you retain the view you originally had, despite this cogent argument being put forward by someone else. So I think it improves everything all round. And even if ultimately the court agrees, the fact that someone maybe acted as devil's advocate and said, well, are we sure we can say that? It improves the quality of the reasoning, which at the end of the day, now that we're only deciding these important cases, it's not just the result that matters. The result obviously matters to the parties, but to the legal system as a whole, the way you get at that result is every bit as important. And the more robust the debate within the court, the more likely it is that reasoning will be itself robust.
And speaking of results, brings us nicely to our last question. Favourite Leinster player?
I'm a Jordan Larmour fan. I like someone who can do things that probably he doesn't even know he's about to do. I think perhaps the rest need to learn to guess better about what he's about to do so they could be in the right place at the right time. And he also went to the same school as my son went to. So.
Which was?
St Andrews.
St Andrews. Very good school. Chief Justice Frank Clark, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now you know our text and WhatsApp number. It's 083 33 975. Do you like the way I say that, Cormac? Do you like that? Yeah. Or you can call Laura on 051 846 123. Or you can text or WhatsApp us or send us an email, deisatoday@wrfm.com, or even write us a letter. A few people have been asking, are we covering the sulky thing that happened last week up in Dublin? Yes, I said we will be covering it this week. Later in the week, we're going to be doing something on that. Hopefully with some of the those that are involved in sulky racing in the Waterford area. Now, for anybody interested in watching the Supreme Court judgment, the decision is now streaming live on RTE News Now. We don't want you to go leaving the programme now because we're talking to Cormac. How are you, Cormac?
Sure, very good. Thank you.
How's your Supreme Court? Are you up to date on all the Supreme Court comings and goings, yeah?
I am 100%. I know exactly what's going on. We'll go back to now after this.
We will, yeah, exactly, yeah. I want to say thanks to Chief Justice Frank Clark, and they're just gone into the Waterford Court and they're going to be broadcasting live now regarding that Graham Dwyer judgment. When we have it, we will bring it to you. Firstly, we're going to talk a little bit about restaurants, but I want to talk to Cormac from Bodega Restaurant about rugby first. You know rugby very well. You've played for a good few years over the years.
Oh, God, yeah. No, we've been playing since we were 12, 13, whatever. But our whole family are quite into it, to be honest. My brother Ben is actually well known. He played a couple of times for Ireland against Scotland.
Ben Cronin.
So we had a couple of good days out in Edinburgh.
What did you think of the match yesterday?
That was obviously very, very disappointing. Obviously, after the first couple of matches, there was a lot of optimism, to be honest, and it proved to be unfounded, to be honest. We just got blown away, absolutely annihilated in every facet of the game. It's
Why?
It's just, you've got to remember, England, they are on to be honest, they are on a bit of a crest of the wave. I know they lost to France and they actually nearly came back, but like in the World Cup, they had such a run. They were playing the best rugby. They annihilated New Zealand and Australia, and I honestly think if they had a few more days rest, like playing those three teams to win the World Cup, playing New Zealand and then Australia and then South Africa in the final, I think it was one step too far for them. But they're so powerful.
I would say Eddie Jones had his main team talk would have been, there's no way we're going to let Farrell win this match.
Yeah.
I would say there was a pure and utter, there's no way Ireland are going to win this.
Yeah. Like the scoreline really deceives that. Like it was to be honest, it was a hammering. Like I know the two tries they got were very, very sloppy, and that's 14 points, and we missed a few kicks, but we were never in the game.
No,
to be honest, anywhere. It was
10 minutes at start of the second half. That was it. But even at that, there was no push on. England basically, they got the scrum going well. They were pushing forward. The amount of turnovers.
Yeah.
Like I was just looking at it. I used to play rugby myself. When you give the ball away, like you can kick the ball away, which is obviously a tactical thing, and you're putting pressure on the opposition. But when you give the ball away by mistakes, that's a cardinal sin in rugby.
Yeah.
Turnovers should not be happening at the rate they were happening yesterday.
Yeah. Actually, it was in the papers today that maybe Ireland actually tried to run the ball too much, to be honest, and they actually should have kicked a bit more. Just it wasn't working. Anytime they went into contact, they were being driven back, and like I don't know, if you're put the two teams together, is there one Irish player that would be in a combined team after he gets his performance?
Suppose if Johnny's on a good day, you put him there with Sexton. And when Sexton is a bad day, Ireland play bad.
Yeah, I know. He's just his head wasn't in the right place. Like just the couple of kicks, there were two of them. They were almost the same. Just scuffed both of them, and they're not in a good place at the moment.
No, they're not. We'll see what happens. Listen, you run Bodega restaurant in town in Waterford City. We were just looking at the papers the other day about Le Crivant in Dublin shutting down after 31 years. End of an era, iconic venue serving its last meal in July. And one of the reasons they're giving as siting is closing down is something that is very, very important, particularly when restaurants are trying to, I suppose, develop, it's when large groups don't show up. Yeah. They book a table. 12 people, 10 people, even 4 people book a table and they don't show up.
I know, it's
cancellations. It's not even cancellations, it's just ignorance.
Yeah, there's one great example I had from a few years ago. On a Wednesday or Thursday night, we had a table of 18 came in, and they all came into us. Obviously it was grand, so we were happy, but we were at it was just before the Harvest Festival, and the restaurants were meeting together, and we met the next day, whatever, and having coffee, and one of the restaurants said, God, they're so annoyed over last night. They did a very late cancellation, but only half an hour beforehand. A table for 18 just rang up, says, sorry, we can't make it. And there was actually not a restaurant there at the time as well. And her ears perked up and says, God, that's very strange. So did we. We had a table for 18, but at the same time, about 30 minutes beforehand, just rang up to cancel. And like, there's a lot of prep goes in for.
So are you saying that whoever was organising that basically booked 3 restaurants?
They did, yeah. And
triple booked.
They were in Jeff's having a few drinks, and it was actually, I won't name it, but it was a hotel.
Right,
and the manager of the hotel, they were all sitting in Jeff's, and he said, shook his hands, we heard, and said, now lads, what would you like to eat tonight? And I said, why? I said, well, I've got 3 bookings, and do you want to go
here, there, there?
Do you want to go there? And they said, oh, well, we're in Jeff's, we're beside Bodega, let's go down there. I says, grand. And he picked up the phone, and then he just cancelled the other 2 restaurants.
And have you seen this person since, or do you know this person?
Oh yeah, I know.
Like, would anything have been said to him now by any of the others?
I'd say so, yeah, but we're kind of in the situation, like if they're they're in an industry that's supplying restaurants. So
but he or she or anybody that's in the restaurant business or the catering or the hospitality business, they should know.
Oh no, exactly.
Like that's not a good thing to
this
do.
guy was a restaurant manager himself before he worked in a hotel, and they knew exactly what he was doing. But it happens a lot. It happens a lot up in Dublin. But
because effectively, especially on a Saturday or a Sunday night, like if you had anything over 10, 12 seatings and they're cancelled. Like you're looking, how much would a person spend on average in a restaurant sitting for one meal? Are you looking at around 30, 35? Do you price it? How much?
But up to 40, 45 maybe, yeah.
45.
But what is quite annoying, and it's you get a table for 17 or 18 and you're all ready for them, and then they all come in and then they're all sitting down and you see there's 6 empty spaces, and it says, are the others arriving? Oh no, there's only 10 of us, only 11 of us, the others can't make it. And
because that's straight away 200, 250 euros potentially gone out of the pocket that night.
Yeah, no, it's incredibly frustrating, but then
what do you do?
It's very hard to give out to the people that are actually there. But would you mind please telling us in future? It's it is very frustrating, because especially generally all that happens at the weekends, and the weekends are the time where obviously restaurants make their money for the week, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and sometimes Thursdays. Restaurants don't really make money, to be honest. Like people come into the restaurants when we're Friday and Saturday, most people, and they think it's like that every night of the week, and they don't realise that this is the money time, this is the busy time. And like the amount of times people say to me, "Oh God, you're rocking here and you're flying. You must be on your 3rd or 4th million now, whatever." And it's come to me on a Tuesday or Wednesday night. But no, we've a new system, actually, a booking system called. We use Open Table.
Okay,
it's not cheap. But it's a great way of managing bookings. And
so this is a computerised system.
Yeah, and people we ring the restaurant to book, and we put their name in and their telephone numbers, or else they can go online and book it through there, and it's quite easy. It gives you all the slots. But what's great about it is it gives them a text a few days beforehand just to confirm your booking. And we find actually that actually really works and really helps. It's just a little reminder, and you might get a phone call then, sorry, I have to cancel, but that's fine, that's grand. But the first Christmas, last Christmas was our second, but the first Christmas we noticed we really had very little no-shows or numbers down, whatever. It was our best. It wasn't our best Christmas, but we were our fewest no-shows.
Yeah, and before that, what percentage would you have of no-shows, would you say, on a weekend? Are you looking at 10%, 20%?
I wouldn't be as high as 20. It could be up to 10.
Yeah. 10,
15, which is...
And again, when margins are tight and when times are not difficult, but tight, you have to get through everything. Every meal matters.
Oh God, yeah.
It's important that you try to get as many and get the tables turned over as much as possible as well, if needs be.
No, exactly. Like, and all the food is prepped. Like, you need to move on your product.
Yeah. Do you think somebody should be fined, or a deposit should be taken away? Somebody just texted in, why don't restaurants take a deposit, and if they cancel, they lose the deposit?
Like people talk about taking credit card numbers, it is just very tricky trying to the security for credit card numbers. I don't know, are we allowed to have credit card numbers on the premises, whatever?
Yeah,
it's it is a point. It's just managing that is tricky, to be honest. It's just having to do it, having the staff or the manpower just to do it is
heavy going.
It's quite tricky, to be honest.
I text in, my daughter works in a big office in Dublin. One of her work colleagues, a young girl, books 4 restaurants on a Saturday night for about 8 friends. And then at the last minute, they decide which one to go to, but never cancel the other 3.
Yeah.
My daughter gave her a mouthful and told her to grow up. So it's not only happening in Waterford, it's happening elsewhere as well. But
it happens everywhere. And the thing is,
it's just not nice.
If you ring up and restaurants are caught doubly. So if you ring up the person and you lambaste them or give out to them, says it's so unfair. They're actually, they'll put their back up and they won't come to your restaurant again.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I don't know. It's kind of it's just really frustrating, really annoying, to be honest. Yeah.
Like, unless you sort of said, listen, we have a €50 cancellation policy for any seats over 4, as a matter of fact. If it's within 24 hours or without reason, well, there might be some way of doing it that you sort of make it a policy. It's not a personal thing. It's just, this is the way it is, and you have to give 24 hours notice. Yeah. They have that in some other businesses.
I know. That's like if you book a hotel, and if you book or if you go, like, if you get a cinema ticket or a show ticket, whatever, if you can't make it, you don't get your money back, and it is down the line. I can see it happening like that. But one of the worst days of the year for restaurants, believe it or not, is for it to happen is Valentine's. There's a restaurant in Dublin called Michael's. Like, it's a small restaurant. I think it's about 45, 50 seater maybe. And I just saw a tweet that he made that on the day itself, by mid-afternoon, he was after getting 6 or 7 tables cancelled, and then he got 5 or 6 no-shows as well of our people. So nearly half his restaurant was empty. Like, he probably did get a few walk-ins, but I think for special days like that, they should have it. Do you know, like, this company called Eventbrite?
Yes.
Where you can bring them in and you can sell a ticket for a seat.
Yeah.
So that, let's say it's €50 per person, then that's your ticket for your meal. And if you can't make it, that's your hard luck. You've to pass on. It's your responsibility then. So
yeah. Willie has just phoned from Waterside to say restaurants should ask for a deposit. Junior, had you a coach?
Junior Drone, yeah.
Yeah, he said he coached you in rugby for 10 years and says you're a very good player.
Yeah, God, he was, we had great time with Junior. He was the first man to send me off, actually.
All right. Go on, talk us through it.
No, we were just, we were quite strong at the time, and we were...
Did you throw a punch or something, did you?
No, we were winning easily, but he was just trying to be fair to the other team, give him a hand, whatever, and you know, when you see decisions that are kind of harsh, I was back chatting. Off you go, back chat. You can't talk. He was dead right.
Junior said you could have been a better player than Ben if you put your mind to it as well. Listen, Cormac, we'll read out any more texts. Continued success to you and everybody in Bodega and all the restaurants in Waterford and Dungarvan. I know there's a few new places open up in Dungarvan and in Tallow and Cappoquin and other places in Tramore. Continued success, because I know it's tough, and any publicity we can give, we certainly will.
There's one thing, we did a great week last week, to be honest, but there's one thing, Thursday nights in the town are absolutely dead as a doornail, so what are we going to do about Thursday nights? So we decided to have our own pop-up restaurant. We've a Pakistani chef with us, and he was doing some staff food, and it was just absolutely fantastic. So we decided to have our own pop-up on a Thursday night, and just 2 starters, 3 mains, whatever, but it was fantastic. We had a full house. It was 96 people in on a Thursday night, and it's just people like events, whatever, and the take was nearly 3 times the normal Thursday night.
Congratulations, well done.
It was
I hope your man got a bit of a tip on that, did he? A bit of an extra.
He did. The poor chap has actually had terrible news. His dad passed away yesterday, so just wish him our condolences.
It's probably he can't fly over, or it's too expensive to fly back.
I think so, yeah.
Oh, God love
him. It's very, very, very hard.
What's his name?
Ali.
Yeah,
but he was absolutely fantastic now.
Okay. Cormac Cronin, thanks so much.
No, thank you very much, Damien.
Now I'm going to be talking to Frank Ryan of the Waterford footballing management team in a second. Firstly, Orla O'Donnell has just tweeted, the Supreme Court has said it intends to refer Graham Dwyer's case over the retention and accessing of his mobile phone metadata to the Court of Justice in the EU. They're delivering their verdict and judgment now this morning in Waterford Court. Frank Ryan, good morning.
Morning, Damien. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. I'm not sure how the phone line is, but we'll just have a couple of minutes to have a quick chat with you, because I wanted to make sure we give the Waterford footballers a good mention after an amazing win up in Sligo at the weekend. You're one of the selectors on the team, is that it?
That's correct, Damien. That's correct, yeah.
And tell us, this is a big win, a really, really big win for Waterford. And we had Dara Corcoran on the other day, a good St Saviour's man, talking about how close they've been coming, how close you've been coming. But Sligo are a good footballing county, and for Waterford to go up there and get a victory was phenomenal.
It was, Damien, but hats off to the whole backroom team and the panel of players, because the preparation for the whole weekend went off to a T. We stayed over on Friday night. Everything went off to our T. Our physios had the boys in top shape. Our nutritionists had everything laid out for us. We were really, really prepared well. And over the last couple of games, as Dara said during the week, was that we're making a lot of errors in games. But when you think back on it, conditions are pretty hard for Gaelic football at this time of the year. Storm Desmond and all the storms and the bad pitches and what have you. So we just said to the boys on Saturday morning, let's throw the shackles off. Never mind the errors that count. Let's go, let's run hard, and let's see, can we get a few decent breaks here.
Yeah,
and
no.
that's basically what happened, Amy.
That's basically what happened. Yeah, no, it really is, because the other match has been very close since, and I'd say it gave a great feeling for the lads on the way home, did it?
Yeah, in fairness to them, it's something that they've been striving for all season. You know, we've been very unlucky against Limerick, one kick of the ball, and that game very lucky against Waterford. We didn't play against Wicklow, we know that, and the boys were down in dumps over that performance. But yesterday they took the shackles, or Saturday they took the shackles off, went for it, and really enjoyed it. And it's great to see the dressing room after, you know, full of laughter, full of fun. But I mean, these guys deserved it. You know, I think we'll have over 60 sessions done already this season since November. These guys out there working hard, and it was great to see you smile on the face. And I make that long journey back home a very, very happy one.
Excellent. Listen, Frank, thanks very much. Continued success, okay?
Thanks, Damien.
Thank you, Frank. Frank Ryan, they're one of the selectors on the Waterford senior football team. Well done to Benji and all the lads. I think we're going to be able to talk now to Mick O'Keefe. Mick is a concert promoter. The All Together Now lineup has just been announced. Mick, good morning. Mick O'Keefe, good morning.
Hi, Damien.
Thanks for joining us this morning. I know you're a busy bookle. Tell us, this looks really, really good.
Yeah, for a music fan, which I think this festival is all about. I mean, they never from the start spent the huge money on those massive headliners like Kings of Leon and the Killers or whatever. But for a music fan, that lineup is pretty spectacular.
Just remind our listeners again, please. We heard some of it on the breakfast show this morning, but people may not have heard it. Give me some of the main acts as we have at present.
Yeah, well, the bigger names are Lauren Hill, Iggy Pop, Groove Armada, who are doing a live show this time round. Then they've got all the cool kids. They've got Little Dragon, Staves, Girl Band, Mura Massa, Floating Points. And then in terms of solo acts, Sinead O'Connor and Rufus Wainwright. So all pretty spectacular in my opinion.
How do you go about getting these acts, Mick? I know that sounds like a strange question, but for the ordinary punter, do you literally have to go to each individual promoter, manager? How does it actually work?
It's a music agent. Every act would have, they've a manager, but they have an agent that particularly looks after their live activity. So you just make the offer to the people that you want way ahead of time. I mean, most of the acts for this summer would have been booked before the end of last year. So really you need to target the acts that you want. And I think what the lads have done here is that they're acts that are, you know, suit their audience totally and probably wouldn't be as in high demand as some of the other big hitters. So, I mean, there's one band that they've got that's caught my eye. It's called King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. Many people might not be familiar with, but they're a psychedelic rock act from Australia who are getting huge around the world. They're playing all the big festivals in America as well, so that's a bit of a coup for the lads.
Yeah, so it's a combination, obviously, of the older guys, you could call Iggy Pop, and those that have been around a bit long, Jarvis Cocker, for example, and then you've got your up-and-coming bands, and it's like a football manager in a soccer club, the ability to actually forward sell and look at these guys and say, yeah, these could well be the next big thing. So you're getting them at a good price, effectively, is that it?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those acts wouldn't be huge money. I mean, there's another one on there, an Irish band called Lancome that won a load of awards last year. They're out of Limerick, and they're kind of a very weird psychedelic traditional band. But again, they're well on the way up. And then on the DJ side of things, they've got some good names: Mano Latuff, DJ Koze, who everybody in that particular scene loves. So they've got a great spread of music, which you obviously need when you've got 4 or 5 different arenas and tents to schedule.
Yeah, and for people that don't remember where it's going, when it's going to be on. It's the last weekend in July, 31st of July to August the 2nd. It's on Curramore House. How would you define or how would you describe the All Together Now festival as it is now, Mick?
I think it's closer to Glastonbury and closer to what Electric Picnic started out being, which is kind of a bit away from the mainstream, so kind of cool, underground. Most people that will be out there would know the acts. It's a very educated music audience. And so I think interesting and eclectic would be two words about most of the acts. I mean, Lauryn Hill, I suppose, is the only... she's got a bit of a mixed reputation for her live performances the last couple of years, so my only hope is that she pulls it out of the bag and gives us a stunning performance, which she's capable of. Yeah,
I was reading about her. Yeah, you're right. She can be a hit or miss, and when she's a hit, she will be fabulous and can be fabulous. So let's just hope she's on form that weekend. And then Sinead, and Sinead O'Connor.
And Sinead O'Connor, who's well back in form. I think everybody saw that performance on the Late Late last year, which went viral. I think a couple of million. She was right back in form, and she's got a good band with her, so she's got a lot of big shows next year, so it's great to see this one in Waterford.
18 stages, as you say. In terms of other things that have happened around the festival, do you think any issues that we had last year may well be sorted for this year?
I would hope so. I mean, I was lucky enough, I only went out on the Saturday, because we're obviously very busy in the city with the spree, so that's the only downside of the timing, that it kind of cuts across a huge activity in the city as well. But I think in their statement this morning they put out that they put a huge amount of work into the travel situation. So hopefully that's better for everyone this year.
Excellent. Listen, Mick O'Keefe, promoter, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
No bother, Damien. Good to talk to you.
Now, just after 11, we're going to be talking about hurling to Shiner as well, so keep in touch with that. A text in Damien, it was freezing in Sligo on Saturday, but worth the trip of 400 miles to see the joys on the lads' faces at the end. Fair play to all those who travelled. Now we have the news at 11 with Karen.